Honey, let me tell you something about antiques. Most people think they're just old things gathering dust. Pretty decorations. Conversation pieces. But some pieces arrive at exactly the right moment carrying messages you didn't know you needed to hear. The anniversary clock showed up on a Tuesday morning in September. I remember because Tuesdays are when I do estate appraisals and I wasn't expecting any deliveries. But there it was sitting on my shop counter when I arrived at 8 o'clock like it had always belonged there. French gilt bronze circa 1880s with exquisite detail work on the base. The kind of piece that makes you stop and stare. And tucked underneath a note. Cream-colored paper, elegant cursive handwriting that looked as old as the clock itself. 40 years ago I made the wrong choice. That's all it said. 7 words. No signature. No return address. No explanation. I stood there in my empty shop holding that note and felt something cold settle in my stomach. Because here's what I haven't told you yet. When that clock arrived, I was 3 weeks away from accepting a marriage proposal from a man I didn't love. A good man. A wealthy man. A safe man. Graham Whitmore from one of Charleston's oldest families. The kind of man my mother would have approved of. The kind my grandmother would have called a sensible choice. And standing in my workshop every single day covered in sawdust and smelling like wood varnish and lemon oil was the man I actually wanted. Jack Moreau. The contractor I'd hired to restore the original woodwork in my shop 3 months ago. The one who made my heart race every time he walked through the door. The one I was too practical, too cautious, too damn scared to choose. So when I read that note, I felt it like a warning shot across my bow. I'm Miranda Rowe, by the way. 40 years old owner of Rowe and Daughters Antiques here in Charleston. The Daughters is singular, actually. My girl Charlotte is away at college in North Carolina, which means for the first time in 20 years I'm facing the reality of what my life will look like next. Who I'll spend it with. What choices I'll make when there's no one else to consider but myself. Turns out that's more terrifying than you'd think. Let me paint you a picture of where I was that September. My life had become uncomfortably predictable. Wake up at 7. Open the shop at 8. Spend the day appraising estates, buying pieces with history, selling them to people who usually don't appreciate that history. Close at 6. Have dinner with Graham at expensive restaurants where everyone knows his name and no one knows mine. Graham had been hinting at marriage for months. Dropped comments about ring sizes. Asked my feelings on destination weddings versus traditional ceremonies. Mentioned that his mother's estate jewelry would look lovely on me. The proposal was coming. We both knew it. And I'd been telling myself I'd say yes. Because Graham was everything that made sense. Successful real estate developer. Impeccable manners. Good family. Financial security. The kind of marriage that looks perfect from the outside. The kind my mother had. The kind my grandmother had. The kind that leaves you hollow inside but with a beautiful house to show for it. But then there was Jack. Jack showed up in June to give me an estimate on restoring the original heart pine floors and the crown molding in my shop. I'd been putting it off for years, but Charlotte graduating high school felt like the right time to invest in the business. He walked in wearing work boots and a faded t-shirt, carrying a toolbox that looked older than both of us, and smiled at me like I was the most interesting person he'd met all day. We talked for 2 hours. Not about the renovation. About everything else. His daughter Emma, who was 16 and giving him gray hairs with her driving. His ex-wife who'd left him 5 years ago and still called him when her car broke down. The furniture he built in his spare time. The way old buildings talk to you if you know how to listen. I hired him on the spot. And for 3 months I looked forward to Tuesday through Thursday afternoons more than I'd looked forward to anything in years. Watching him work. Listening to him explain the difference between heart pine and yellow pine. Bringing him sweet tea and pretending I needed to check on the progress when really I just wanted to be near him. You'd think by 40 you'd know yourself well enough to stop lying about what you want. You'd think 2 failed marriages would teach you that marrying for the wrong reasons never ends well. But there I was about to make the exact same mistake my mother made, my grandmother made, probably every woman in my family made since we crawled out of the red Georgia clay. So that clock, that note. 40 years ago I made the wrong choice. I needed to know who sent it. Took me about 2 hours to trace the delivery. Local courier service paid in cash picked up from a retirement home outside Savannah. Magnolia Gardens Senior Living. The sender had left a name. Catherine Beaumont. Beaumont. I knew that name. Old Charleston aristocracy. The kind of family that still gets mentioned in the society pages even though their money dried up 2 generations ago. I called the number listed for Magnolia Gardens. A woman answered, professional and pleasant. Magnolia Gardens. This is Jennifer speaking. Hi, my name is Miranda Rowe. I'm calling about one of your residents, Catherine Beaumont. She sent me something and I'd like to speak with her if that's possible. There was a pause. Then, oh, you're the antique dealer. Miss Beaumont said you'd call. She's been waiting. My skin prickled. She knew I would trace the clock. She said you would. Said you'd understand. She'd like you to visit if you're willing. She has a story to tell you. Something in the woman's voice made me say yes before I'd thought it through. I can drive down tomorrow. She'll be glad to hear it. Miss Beaumont doesn't get many visitors. But she's been very insistent about seeing you. Said it's important. I hung up and stood there in my shop staring at the anniversary clock. It was keeping perfect time despite being over 100 years old. The soft tick-tick-tick filled the silence. My phone buzzed. Graham. Dinner tonight, I'm thinking Peninsula Grill. I looked at the clock, looked at my phone, typed back. Can we do tomorrow instead? Something came up with the shop. Not technically a lie, but not quite the truth either. Of course, I actually have something I want to discuss with you. Tomorrow's perfect. My stomach dropped. This was it. He was going to propose. I could feel it. I didn't answer. Just slipped the phone back in my pocket and picked up the note again. 40 years ago, I made the wrong choice. What choice? And why send the message to me? The shop door opened. Jack arriving for the afternoon. He had his toolbox in one hand and 2 cups of coffee in the other. Thought you might need a refill, he said, handing me one. Our fingers brushed. That same electric feeling I'd been pretending not to notice for 3 months. You're a lifesaver. He noticed the clock. That's new. Beautiful piece. French? Good eye. 1880s. It was delivered this morning. He leaned closer, studying the detail work. I could smell sawdust and soap. Estate sale. Not exactly. It came with a mystery attached. I showed him the note. He read it, then looked at me with those dark eyes that saw too much. Someone's trying to tell you something. That's what I'm afraid of. He handed the note back. You going to find out what? I'm driving to Savannah tomorrow. The woman who sent it is in a retirement home. Want company. God, I wanted company. I wanted to spend 3 hours in a car with Jack Moreau talking about everything and nothing, feeling like myself instead of the person I'd been pretending to be for Graham. Better not, I made myself say. This feels like something I need to do alone. He nodded. Didn't push. That was one of the things I loved about him. He gave you space to make your own mistakes. Loved. I thought the word loved about Jack Moreau. I turned away before he could see my face. I should let you get to work. Miranda. I looked back. If you need to talk when you get back. About the clock or whatever. You know where to find me. Thanks, Jack. He went to the workshop. I stayed at the counter, hands wrapped around the coffee he'd brought me, staring at 7 words that felt like they were burning a hole through time itself. The drive to Savannah the next morning took 2 hours. I left at 9 after calling Graham to reschedule dinner for the following evening. He sounded disappointed but understanding. Always understanding. Always accommodating. Never pushing back or challenging me or making me feel anything except vaguely guilty. Magnolia Gardens was nicer than I expected. Not one of those depressing facilities that smell like industrial cleaner and sadness. This was a converted plantation house, white columns and wraparound porches, surrounded by live oaks dripping Spanish moss. Jennifer met me at the front desk. Young woman, early 30s with kind eyes. Miss Beaumont is in the sunroom. She's been ready since 7 this morning. She smiled. Fair warning, she's sharp as a tack and doesn't mince words. Sounds like my kind of person. The sunroom was at the back of the building, overlooking gardens that must have been spectacular in their day. Now they were pleasant but modest. Still beautiful, just in a quieter way. Catherine Beaumont sat in a wingback chair by the window. She was 82, according to the information I'd looked up, but you wouldn't know it from her posture. Straight-backed. Elegant. Wearing a lavender dress and pearls like she was expecting the queen. She turned when I walked in and I stopped breathing. Because I knew those eyes. Sad eyes. Regretful eyes. The kind of eyes I'd been seeing in my own mirror lately. "Miss Rowe," she said. Her voice was cultured. Charleston, the kind that takes generations to cultivate. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." I sat in the chair across from her. "You sent me an anniversary clock." "I did. Beautiful piece, isn't it? It was a wedding gift. 40 years ago. The note said you made the wrong choice." She smiled. Bitter and knowing. "I did. And I've spent 40 years regretting it. But we're not here to talk about my regrets, Miss Rowe. We're here to talk about yours." My throat tightened. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you? A beautiful, intelligent woman dating a man she doesn't love because he's appropriate. Planning to say yes to a proposal out of practicality instead of passion. That sound familiar? I wanted to argue. Wanted to deny it. But she was holding up a mirror and I couldn't look away. "How do you know about Graham?" "Because I've been watching you, honey. Your shop is on King Street. I used to live 2 blocks away before I moved here. I'd see you with that handsome, boring man at Peninsula Grill. See the way you smiled like you were performing for an audience. And then I'd see you at your shop with that contractor. See the way you looked at him when he wasn't watching. The way you came alive. Heat flooded my face. You've been spying on me. I've been seeing myself in you. There's a difference." She reached for a photograph on the side table. Handed it to me. 2 people. Young, maybe early 20s. Standing in a garden. The woman wore a white dress and a cameo brooch. The man had his arm around her waist. They were looking at each other like nothing else in the world existed. "That's me," Catherine said. 40 years ago. "And that's Thomas Moreau." "Moreau." The photograph shook in my hands. "Jack's grandfather. Is that the contractor's name, Jack?" She laughed soft and sad. "His grandfather's name was Thomas. Tommy, I called him. He worked on my family's estate. Carpenter. Furniture maker. Most talented man I've ever met with his hands." I couldn't speak. I was 22. Engaged to Robert Beaumont. Good family. Good prospects. My parents approved. Everyone approved. The wedding was planned. The invitations sent. Everything perfect. But you loved Thomas. I loved Tommy more than I've ever loved anything in this world. He made me laugh. Made me think. Made me feel like I was more than just a pretty ornament for someone's life. We had plans. We were going to run away together. Start over somewhere, no one knew our names. What happened? I got scared. Her voice cracked. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, my mother sat me down. Told me love fades, but security lasts forever. Told me I'd regret throwing away my future for a carpenter. Told me I was being foolish and romantic and young. I knew where this was going. Felt it like ice spreading through my chest. I married Robert. Sent Tommy away. Told him I'd made a mistake. That what we had wasn't real. And Robert was a good husband. Faithful, kind, boring as unsalted grits. We had a comfortable life. Beautiful home. Traveled. Had dinner parties. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But inside, she looked at me. Those sad, sad eyes. Inside, I was dying. Slowly. Every single day. Wondering what my life would have looked like if I'd been brave enough to choose what I wanted instead of what made sense. We sat in silence. The clock on the wall ticked. "Robert passed 3 years ago," she said finally. "And you know what I did? I tried to find Tommy. Spent months searching. Finally found him living in Charleston. Still unmarried. Still making furniture. Still waiting in some small way, even though 40 years had passed." "Did you contact him?" "I tried. Got his address. Wrote him a letter. Never sent it. Because what do you say? Sorry I ruined both our lives. Because I was too afraid to disappoint my parents." She pulled a handkerchief from her sleeve. Dabbed her eyes. "That's why I sent you the clock, Miss Rowe. Because I see you making the same mistake I made. And I can't watch another woman throw away 40 years because she's too afraid to choose passion over safety. I don't even know if Jack feels the same way I do. Of course he does. I've watched you together. The way he looks at you. That man is in love. He's just waiting for you to admit what you want. I thought about Jack. The way he brought me coffee. The way he explained his work like it mattered that I understood. The way he'd offered to drive to Savannah without asking questions. What if it doesn't work out? What if I choose him and it falls apart? Catherine leaned forward, took my hand. What if it does work out? What if you get 40 years of happiness instead of 40 years of regret? Isn't that worth the risk? I started crying. Couldn't help it. All the fear and confusion and longing I'd been pushing down for months came pouring out. I'm so scared. I know, honey. I know. But let me tell you something. Looking back on my life, the only thing I'm afraid of is dying without telling Tommy the truth. That I loved him. That choosing Robert was the biggest mistake I ever made. That I've thought about him every single day for 40 years. I wiped my eyes. Then tell him. She shook her head. It's too late for me. It's not. You should let me arrange a meeting. My shop. This week. I'll bring him. You tell him everything you just told me. And what will you do, Miss Rowe? I stood up. Felt something settle in my chest. Something that felt like clarity. I'm going to tell Graham no. And then I'm going to tell Jack yes. Catherine smiled. Really smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. Good girl. I drove back to Charleston with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Pulled into my shop parking lot at 4 in the afternoon. Jack's truck was still there. He was in the workshop sanding the last section of crown molding. Looked up when I walked in. How'd it go? I need to tell you something. He put down the sandpaper. Gave me his full attention. Catherine Beaumont is your grandfather's first love. 40 years ago, she chose to marry someone else instead of running away with him. She's regretted it every day since. Jack's face went still. My grandfather Thomas. Yes, she wants to see him. Tell him the truth. I told her I'd arrange a meeting. He never talks about her. But there's a photograph. In his desk. Woman wearing a cameo brooch. He's kept it locked up for 50 years. The same photograph I'd seen. The same couple. Will he come? If I ask him? Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then why are you doing this for a stranger? Because she's not a stranger. She's me in 40 years if I make the wrong choice. And I don't want to be her Jack. I don't want to wake up at 82 and realize I wasted my life being practical instead of happy. What are you saying? I stepped closer. Close enough to smell sawdust and soap. I'm saying Graham's going to propose tomorrow night. And I'm going to tell him no. Because I don't love him. I love someone else. Jack's eyes searched mine. Who? You, Jack. I'm in love with you. Have been since the day you walked in here with your toolbox and smiled at me like I mattered. I've been too scared to say it. Too worried about what makes sense. But Catherine's right. I'd rather risk everything with you than spend the rest of my life safe and miserable. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then he kissed me. And honey, let me tell you. It felt like coming home after being lost for 40 years. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that since June. Why didn't you? Because you were with Graham. Because I'm a divorced contractor with a teenage daughter and an ex-wife who still calls me for help. Because you deserve someone who can give you everything. You give me everything that matters. He kissed me again. Softer this time. What about your grandfather, I asked. Will he meet with Catherine? I'll ask him. But Miranda, you need to know. He's never gotten over her. If she breaks his heart again, she won't. She just wants to tell him the truth. That she made a mistake. That she's sorry. That she loved him. Jack pulled out his phone. I'll call him now. I waited outside, giving him privacy. My own phone buzzed. Graham, looking forward to tomorrow night. I've made a reservation at High Cotton. 7 o'clock. Wear something special. I stared at the message. Thought about Catherine sitting in that sunroom alone with 40 years of regret. Thought about Graham planning a proposal to a woman he'd never really known. I typed back. We need to talk first. Can you come to the shop at 6? The response was immediate. Is everything okay? It will be. Jack came out. He said yes. Didn't even hesitate. Just asked when and where. Tomorrow. 5 o'clock. I'll bring Catherine. You sure about this? I'm sure about you. The rest we'll figure out. He pulled me close. I buried my face in his shoulder and let myself feel it. The terror. The relief. The bone-deep certainty that this was right. The next day felt like it lasted a year. I called Catherine at 9, told her Thomas had agreed to meet her. She cried. I picked her up at 3:30, helped her into my car, drove back to Charleston with my heart in my throat. She was quiet most of the drive. Finally, as we pulled onto King Street, she said, "What if he hates me? He kept your photograph for 50 years. He doesn't hate you. What if I can't find the words? You'll find them. You've had 40 years to practice." I parked behind the shop. Helped her out. She was shaking. Jack's truck was already there. And an older truck next to it. Thomas Moreau was early. We walked in through the back entrance. The workshop, where Jack restored broken things and made them beautiful again. Thomas Moreau stood by the workbench. 82 years old. White hair, weathered face, wearing a button-down shirt and slacks like he was going to church. He turned. Saw Catherine. And time stopped. I'd never seen two people look at each other that way. Like 40 years had dissolved. Like they were 22 again, standing in a garden, planning a future that never happened. "Tommy." Catherine's voice broke. "Katie." They stood there, 10 feet apart. A lifetime between them. Then Catherine said I made a mistake. He didn't answer. 40 years ago I made the wrong choice. I married Robert because I was scared. Because my parents wanted me to. Because I was too much of a coward to choose you. Casey, let me finish. Please. She was crying now. I've thought about you every single day. Wondered what our life would have looked like. Wondered if you ever thought about me. If you ever forgave me. There's nothing to forgive. Yes, there is. I broke your heart. I broke mine. I wasted 40 years on safety when I could have had a lifetime with you. Thomas crossed the distance between them. Took her hands. I waited 2 years. Thought you'd change your mind. Come find me. When you didn't, I tried to move on. Dated. Almost got married once. Couldn't do it. Because she wasn't you. I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing. You're here now. That's what matters. They held hands. Two 82-year-old people getting a second chance they'd thought was gone forever. Jack and I slipped out. Gave them privacy. We were standing outside when Graham pulled up. 6 o'clock exactly. Always punctual. He got out of his car, saw me with Jack, and his expression flickered. Just for a second. Then the pleasant smile returned. "Miranda. I thought we were meeting inside. We need to talk out here." He looked at Jack. "Should I know you?" "Jack Moreau. I'm the contractor." "Right." Graham turned to me. "What's this about?" I took a breath. "I can't have dinner with you tonight. And I can't marry you." The smile froze. "Excuse me. You're a good man, Graham. Kind. Successful. Everything that makes sense on paper. But I don't love you. I don't think I ever did. And I can't marry you when my heart belongs to someone else." He stared at me. Then at Jack. "This is a joke." "It's not, I'm sorry. I should have been honest months ago. We've been dating for a year. I've told my family. Made plans. And you're telling me it's over because of some contractor." Jack stepped forward. I put a hand on his arm. "It's not about Jack," I said. "It's about me. About not making choices out of fear. About not waking up in 40 years and realizing I wasted my life on someone who looked good on paper but never made me feel alive." Graham's face hardened. "You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." He got back in his car. Drove away without another word. I exhaled. Started shaking. Jack pulled me against him. "You okay?" "I will be." We went back inside. Thomas and Catherine were still in the workshop. Sitting on the bench. Holding hands. Talking quietly. Catherine looked up. Saw us. Smiled. "Thank you," she said. "For giving us this. Over the next 8 months, I watched their story unfold. Thomas visited Catherine 3 times a week. They had dinner together, took walks in the garden, talked for hours about the life they'd missed and the time they had left. Catherine passed away peacefully in her sleep. Thomas was holding her hand. At the funeral, he pulled me aside. "Thank you for giving me those 8 months. Was it enough?" "After losing 40 years, he was quiet. "Then I spent 40 years loving someone I couldn't have. 8 months actually having her. Worth every minute of the wait. But Miss Rowe, don't wait. Don't waste a single day." I didn't. Jack and I took things slow. Honest. No more pretending. My daughter Charlotte came home for Thanksgiving, met Jack, pulled me aside and said, "You're different. Happy different." She was right. The anniversary clock still sits on my mantle. Ticks away the seconds, the minutes, the hours, keeping perfect time like it has for over a century. Sometimes I look at it and think about Catherine and Thomas. All the moments they lost. All the years wasted on practical choices that left them empty inside. But then Jack comes home from a job site smelling like sawdust, bringing me sweet tea, and I look at that clock and think something else entirely. I think, thank God I didn't wait 40 years. Every time that clock chimes, I remember. Remember Catherine's sad eyes. Remember the way Thomas looked at her after 40 years apart. Remember the feeling of telling Graham no, and Jack yes. A year after I broke up with Graham, Jack asked me to marry him. Not at a fancy restaurant. Not with a huge production. We were in the workshop. He was building a table. I was refinishing a chair. He just looked up and said, "Marry me." I said yes before he finished the sentence. We got married in my shop. Small ceremony. Charlotte was my maid of honor. Jack's daughter Emma was a bridesmaid. Thomas gave me away since my own father had passed years before. And you know what? I wore the cameo brooch. The one from the photograph. The one Thomas had kept locked in his desk for 50 years. He gave it to Jack the night we got engaged. Said Catherine would have wanted me to have it. So I pinned it to my dress and married the man who made me feel alive. Sometimes people ask me if I regret leaving Graham. If I ever wonder what my life would have looked like with financial security and social status. I tell them the truth. I've never regretted a single second. The anniversary clock is still ticking. Still keeping perfect time. Still reminding me that every second matters. Every choice counts. Every moment of courage is worth the fear. Jack just walked in, brought me coffee, kissed the top of my head, asked what I was thinking about. I told him the truth. I was thinking about how grateful I am. For Catherine. For the clock. For 7 words that saved my life. He smiled. The smile that makes my heart race even after all this time. What 7 words? 40 years ago, I made the wrong choice. He pulled me close. And now I'm making all the right ones. The clock chimed. 6 o'clock in the evening. Time for dinner. Time to close the shop. Time to go home with the man I love. Time to live the life I chose instead of the life I settled for. And every single day, I thank Catherine Beaumont for having the courage to send me that warning. For being honest about her regrets. For giving me the push I needed to be brave. Because she's right. Looking back on your life and realizing you were too afraid to choose happiness. That's the real tragedy. And when I'm 82, sitting in my own chair looking back on my life, I'm going to remember this moment. This choice. This terrifying, beautiful decision to choose love over safety. And I'm going to smile. Because, honey, let me tell you something. The anniversary clock taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned. Time is precious. Every second counts. And the only thing you'll regret at the end is the chances you didn't take and the love you were too afraid to choose. So, choose brave. Choose passion. Choose the life that makes your heart race. Choose now. Don't wait 40 years.